What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Bako99, and I'm coming out still with the weekly rankings video, but just want to do a quick video, and that's about the Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman debate. And this debate has come up in a couple of my leagues, and I hear questions all the time about who should I start, or should I trade Tevin Coleman, or should I trade Devontae Freeman, or this, that, and the other, who's better? And I'm just going to let you know what I've seen with my own eyes, and hopefully that'll kind of help paint the picture of what's really going on with the Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman split in Atlanta. So in my 6 leagues, in 2 of them I have Devontae Freeman, and one of those 2 is my most expensive league, so it's the most important one, and I actually took him in round 1. I had a late pick, 14 team league. I had, I think, pick 10. He was what I thought the best available at the time. I admit, did not know it would be this much of a split between the 2, but still I really like Devontae Freeman. Looked nice in the preseason. He is just a flat out good runner, so that's who I roll with. But I also understand, and I also see Tevin Coleman's greatness as well, so I was able to pick him up in 2 other leagues. So within 6 leagues I have Devontae in 2 and I have Tevin Coleman in 2. And the debate came up in one of my leagues with Tevin Coleman because I traded with the guy who already had a stacked team, but he got super stacked with his team when he was able to pick up Matt Jones off the waivers and trade him to some fool for Brandon Marshall. And at that point, he was overly stacked, but he was going to flip Brandon Marshall into a better player to fit his needs. So I just jumped in because I had a good team, but I really missed when I drafted Latavius Murray. I'm done with that Raiders. You know, if you think a split back situation is bad, then try some of these Raider running backs with their 3 running back carousel they have going. So I'm getting rid of and got rid of all my Raiders running backs. Moving on from that. That was a mistake. I missed it in the draft. Should have took someone else, but oh well, you make adjustments and move on. And then Tevin Coleman, of course, proceeds to score 29 points that week. Now everybody's talking about how I just even stacked his team, this, that, and the other, but they wasn't seeing it through my eyes. And then also, when I listen to these radio shows and these fantasy shows, there's a lot of callers always calling with some form of question, start, sit, this, that, or the other about the 2. So I'm going to clear it up because I have Devontae Freeman in 2 of my leagues, and I have Tevin Coleman in 2 of my leagues. But my most important thing, I have Devontae Freeman, which I took in the first round because I had pick 10 of a 14 team league. So I've watched almost every single, not even almost, I've watched every single Atlanta Falcons game this year closely, and this is what I see, and this will help you really know what's going on with the 2. So when it comes down to it, the first thing you need to know is that they are not truly a 50-50 split. Tevin Coleman, rather, he is not getting 50% of the snaps, and Freeman getting 50% of the snaps. It's really more along the lines of like 70-30, right? So with that in mind, I value Devontae Freeman more than I value Tevin Coleman, right? So when I'm watching the games, Freeman is the better runner. Flat out, there's no debate about it. Handing the ball off, power plays, stretch plays, tosses, you name it, Freeman is the better running back, and he's pretty damn good. Tevin Coleman is more elusive, he's faster, he has bigger play potential, he's amazing as well. So I like to, if I had to choose between the 2, give me the person who's getting the most snaps, getting the most opportunity, because those numbers are more sustainable when you're getting the amount of touches. But I realize and I recognize that every week you look up, Tevin Coleman is producing. So to someone who doesn't watch the games and just notice the box scores, you would think that Tevin Coleman could be the way to go. And it may sound like I'm siding with Devontae Freeman, but I'm really not. I'm just explaining the dynamics of the 2. So let's take Tevin Coleman. Let's take the 2 big games he had this year. In one of the weeks he had 29 points, and another week he had 29 points. And if I remember his points total, I believe he had 3 weeks of 15 to 19 points, and then he had the 2 29-point games. So let's talk about the first one. Can't think of the team they were playing. Maybe the Saints, I believe. But Freeman would run the ball down the field. He'll pick up 40 yards on this drive, get to the goal line. Tevin Coleman got the carry, got the touchdown. That's one. Then he would pick up 60 yards on the drive, and not really a 60-yard run, get a 14-yard run here, 8-yard run here, 10-yard run here, but he was balling. So he got damn near about 60 yards on the drive, get to the goal line, Tevin Coleman gets a touchdown. And in that game, that happened 3 times, and Tevin Coleman got 3 touchdowns. That was one of his big games. And then let's look at his other big game, which was recent. He had 4 catches for 136 yards. If you don't look at the name, you would think that was Julio. But in that game, it was Tevin Coleman. And then he does produce probably the best backup running back producing there is in fantasy going right now, because he'll get you the other 15 points. But the 229 points were just anomaly. How many times throughout the year is he going to score 3 touchdowns? How many times out the year is he going to have 4 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown, and Julio will have under 5 fantasy points? It's really not sustainable to be your every down running back too, in my opinion. But when you look at Freeman is getting the bulk of the carries. Freeman will also get a couple of pass plays out the backfield, and Freeman is the flat out better runner. So if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Devontae Freeman, and he will be the better play. To me, he's more of the every week play. And Tevin Coleman, who I really like too, who I drafted him in 2 of my leagues too, so I'm not saying he's bad, but he's to me more of a spot player, because you cannot depend on 4 catches, 136 yards. You cannot depend on 3 touchdowns. Because you take away those 3 touchdowns in that first game, he really just had a subpar regular game, 40 yards rushing, 20 yards passing. But he got those 3 touchdowns. If Freeman would have got those 3 touchdowns, he would have been sitting there damn near 40 points that game. But he didn't though, so it is what it is. He did not. They gave it to Tevin Coleman. But Freeman had a chance to punch it in, and he didn't. So he's getting the goal line carries as well. So, and then with the people in my league who we were kind of debating with about that trade and about how I shouldn't have given them Tevin Coleman and all this, that, and the other, ironically, that same person had Tevin Coleman in another league. So I asked him, how many times did you start Tevin Coleman this year? He said 1. I said, exactly. I was hurting for running backs in that league, and I needed an every week starter, for the most part. And as good as Tevin Coleman is, as good as he's been doing this year, most people don't just run him out there as their every week starter. And that's what I was looking for. So on one hand, we can agree that Tevin Coleman is great. He's awesome, and you should have him if you can get him. But he's not per se a better fantasy starting running back option than Devontae Freeman, even though thus far he's outperformed Freeman. Remember what I said about give me the player who gets the more consistent bulk of the carries? Is Freeman. They have more opportunities to produce. So my bet is throughout the year that Freeman will eventually pass Tevin Coleman up on the point totals. And yes, I could be wrong, but based on what I'm seeing when I'm watching the games and not the box scores at the end of the day, is that Tevin Coleman's real performances were anomalies, in the sense of how many times is he going to get you 3 touchdowns? How many times is he going to get you 4 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown? Now, I admit that was an awesome game planning to take advantage of the linebackers for Denver, and they actually going to do that more often. They said the reason they did that was because they was trying to limit his snaps because of his sickle cell traits and the high altitude at Denver, and they came up with different ways to use him so he could be more effective in the minimum times they used him for that week because of his condition. And then lo and behold, it was a great, genius play call to get him isolated in the slot against Brandon Marshall for the Denver Broncos running back, and he just torched them. But you think Seattle, who they have up next, I believe they play Seattle next, but you think they're going to sit there and allow that to happen again? No. Am I saying Tevin Coleman can't go out there and get 18 points this weekend? No, I'm not saying that. He very well could, but I'm saying if you had to choose, or if you had the option to get one of the two, just know the type of player you're getting. Tevin Coleman, he's been doing great. I think he can sustain 10 to 15 points in this offense, but I think Freeman will have the better chance on the week-to-week basis to start out producing Tevin Coleman in fantasy point wise. So it's a tough decision, man. They're both great, and normally I just hate being in the split back situation. I try my best to only have running backs who don't really split time in the backfield, which is why I'm so quick to just be off the Latavius Murray, DeAndre Washington, and Jalen Richard train. And I think Jalen Richard may be the one that actually ends up going to get the bulk of the carries. But when they actually got the opportunities, they didn't do anything more special than Lamar Miller. So I bet you the Raiders sitting there thinking like they're probably just better, giving all of them a third of the carries every game. We seem to be more effective that way. So I just try to stay away from those situations. But you can't ignore Tevin Coleman. You can't ignore Devontae Freeman. I had someone tell me Devontae Freeman was the worst pick. He's more messing with me because we buddies, we rivals. So, of course, we're going to give each other shit, whenever we have a chance to, But I'm sitting there saying, no, Freeman is legit. You can look at the way he runs, and he is the real deal. Whatever. Now, if Freeman gets hurt, yes, Tevin Coleman is going to be great. If Tevin Coleman gets hurt, Freeman is going to go back to producing like he did last year. So the point of this video is that if some of you were not able to see what's going on, it's not a 50-50 split. Devontae Freeman is the lead back. He does get about 65% of the snaps to Tevin Coleman's 35%. But Tevin Coleman can be used regardless of the day Freeman's having in the pass game, and he's still a very strong play, especially for a flex or to fill in the bye. I just wouldn't bank on him being my number 2 starting running back every week. So have fun. If you play Tevin Coleman, play Freeman. You could get a trade for him if you already have him, but please understand what you're dealing with. Freeman, I believe, is going to be your safest bet on a week-to-week basis, and Tevin Coleman is more of an anomaly player to win. You can't really expect to get 30 points from him without those rare type of games, scoring 3 touchdowns or 4 catches for 136 yards, what I think some of that production is going to start to slow down. So some of you may agree, some of you may not agree. That's the fun of the game, but right now, if I had to say it, I would bring Freeman first, Tevin Coleman second. Freeman is more of a flex play option. Devontae Freeman is more of someone you can trust to run out there on a week-to-week basis for the most part. So holler at you guys later. Let me start working on this weekly rankings videos. I can have it up by Saturday. Anything else you guys want me to talk about, discuss, let me know, and I'll see you in the rankings video. Peace.